We'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight for our council meeting. And we're going to start things with the invocation and pledge of allegiance by Councilman Blaylock.
Dear Heavenly Father, bless us tonight as we make the decisions to help our community and the citizens of our community. Give us the wisdom to move in the right direction and make the hard decisions. In your blessed name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're going to start things off with public hearing number 1. And the purpose of public hearing is to receive citizens' comments on proposed amendments to the comprehensive land use plan to incorporate the newly adopted flood maps. We have anybody signed up, Lisa?
No, there are nobody signed up for this one.
Okay. All right, we can have anybody wish to discuss, or we can have a motion.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay. Second. All in favor? And we can take action on this, can't we, Lisa?
Yes, sir.
Any discussion? Any motions?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
I'm sorry, so move to,
To adopt the flood map as presented.
thank you.
Okay. Second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Flood map's done. Okay, we've got 2 proclamations tonight. One is for the Clerk's Week, and Councilman Boggs going to do that for us.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. This is on behalf of our mayor, Sin Brochure. This is Municipal Clerks Week, May 6th to the 12th, 2018. The Office of Municipal Clerk is a time-honored and vital part of local government and exists throughout the world. The Office of Municipal Clerk is the oldest among public servants. The Municipal Clerk provides the professional link between citizens, the local governing bodies, and the agencies of government at all other levels. Municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all, and the municipal clerk serves as the information center on functions of local government and community. And municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office of the municipal clerk through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, the annual meetings of their state, provincial, county, and international professional organizations. Whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of the Office of Municipal Clerk. On behalf of Mayor Sin Brochure, the town of Oak Island, we do recognize the week of May 6th through the 12th as Municipal Clerks Week, and further extend appreciation to our municipal clerk, the one and only to my left, Lisa Seitz, and to all municipal clerks for their vital services and their exemplary dedication to the communities they represent. Dated today, May 8th, 2018.
Thank you, Lisa, for everything you do for us. She's like our mother here sometimes. Second proclamation is Safe Boating Week, and if I could have my Coast Guard Reserve people come up. For nearly 90 million Americans, boating continues to be a popular recreational activity from coast to coast and everywhere in between. People are taking to the water and enjoying time together, boating, sailing, paddling, and fishing. During National Safe Boating Week, the U.S. Coast Guard and its federal, state, and local safe boating partners encourage all boaters to explore and enjoy America's beautiful waters responsibly. Safe boating begins with preparation. The Coast Guard estimates that human error accounts for 70% of all boating accidents, and that life jackets could prevent more than 80% of boating fatalities. Though basic boating safety procedures, carrying life-saving, emergency distress, communications equipment, wearing life jackets, attending safe boating courses, participating in safe boat activity checks, and staying sober when navigating can help ensure boaters on America's coastal, inland, and offshore waters to stay safe throughout the season. National Safe Boating Week is observed to bring attention to important life-saving tips for recreational boaters so they can have a safer, more fun experience on the water throughout the year. Whereas on average, 650 people die each year in boating-related accidents in the United States, approximately 80% of these fatalities caused by drowning. And whereas the vast majority of these accidents are caused by human error and poor judgment and not on the boat equipment or environmental factors. Whereas a significant number of boaters who lose their lives by drowning each year would be alive today if they had worn their life jackets. Therefore, I, Loman Scott, Mayor Pro Tem, do hereby support the goals of Safe Boating Campaign and proclaim May 19th through 25th, 2018 as National Safe Boating Week and the start of a year-round effort to promote safe boating. Move over just a little bit. Oh, sure. How about this? She has yours. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate everything you do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jody Britton for Parks and Recreation. Okay, when it comes up, tell Bob Jody Britton. Okay, next on the agenda, adjustment, approval of the agenda. Anybody have any adjustments?
I do, Madam.
Okay,
Mr. Mayor, Pro Tem, I'd like to remove item 4 from the consent agenda.
which, item number 4?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Approval of audit contract, number 4.
Are you going to put it under, does it go under new business, Lisa?
It'll go under,
Items
right
removed.
under items removed from consent agenda.
Got it.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. We have a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second. All in favor? Okay. All right, committee appointments. We have 2 people that have applied. I'm sorry?
Public comment, sir.
Oh, is that? All right, we have people signed up for public comments?
Yes, sir.
Okay, who's first?
Katrina Purser? Is she here yet? Yes, okay.
Katrina Purser, 5001 Oak Quinn Boulevard. I'm here on behalf of the Beach Preservation Society. I'm going to be reading Miss Roseanne Fortner's words as she could not be here tonight. Thanks to everyone who supported, participated, and or donated to what was an outstanding fundraising event for the beach on April 21st. We hope you found your name or group in our state pilot ad. And we will try to get our sponsors and auction donors list attached to a new web article about the wine tasting. Our web link is beachoki.com. In the remaining months of 2018, we hope you all get to know us better. We aren't just doggy bags, doggy boxes, and bike racks and wine tasting. In 2017, we documented engagement with nearly 4,800 adults and over 300 children through 19 events or media products. All of our volunteers, and in those 19 events, we logged over 4,400 people hours. According to the website independentsector.org, Value of Volunteer Time 2018, each one of those hours for a North Carolina volunteer is worth $23.41. This means the Beach Preservation Society contributed $103,238 in services to the beach and to the town of Oak Island. We gladly contribute our time and talent in education and community engagement because we are dedicated to enhancing the Oak Island beach experience. We want to make the beach better for everyone now and in the future. Remember, we have several vacancies coming up on our 10-member advisory board. Come join us, serve the beach.
Thank you, Mrs. Purser, and we appreciate everything you guys do.
Betty Monin.
My name is Betty Monin, and I live at 3501 East Yacht Drive here on Oak Island. Mayor Pro Tem Scott and our council members and our citizens here, and also the employees of Oak Island, my philosophy in life has been don't lay blame, fix the problem. I'm concerned, I'm embarrassed, and I'm angry about the sand used in the beach renourishment. This is beach sand. And this is our dune at 40th Street. I understand that approximately 30% of the entire dune renourishment is this black material. Why has Oak Island accepted this material? And I really don't care that you got a waiver. It's ugly, ugly, ugly. The wildlife authorities have determined that turtle nests must be removed because of pollution in the dunes. Yes, I'm calling it pollution. Somebody owes Oak Island for supplying polluted sand. This isn't sand that is the same quality as the beach that has existed on Oak Island. I'm also seeing beach access being dug out of the dunes. There's actually a tunnel going from one of the beach accesses a little bit west of 40th Street. You know, I can't blame them because there's approximately an 8-foot drop-off. You might want to confer with some of the experts that talk about these escapes that happen in the dunes. My tax dollars are being squandered on substandard work and materials. Stop. What is our town council doing to fix this problem?
Thank you. Mr. Kelly, you have any comments about the sand and the...
Well, Moffett Nichols has talked with the state and federal agencies on the plan that we need to implement. She was right that we are going to have the turtles relocated. There is a temperature study that they're requesting for us to do in this area along with the Wilmington Harbor project. And the turtle nesting in the Wilmington Harbor project from Castle Beach to 58th Street will also have to be relocated, all the turtles in that area as well. The escarpment, we have permission till May 15th to go back in and drag the escarpment areas down. We've had CAMA come in and look at the accesses and the crossovers, and they have allowed us to go back in and cut those down because people were having a hard time crossing over those. Plus the escarpment that she was addressing was on the ocean side of those. So it is something that we are addressing, and we have come up with a sort of an outline of everything that's going on, and Lisa will be getting that out on the webpage and everywhere else tomorrow for the public to be able to see what the town and the engineers recommended for us to do.
What have they recommended on the color or texture of the different sands?
The color of the sand is something that the state of North Carolina doesn't have a regulation on. The granular size and those things, we are compliant with the specs that we had. Yes, the color of it is a dark color, as she brought up, and it is a concern. It was a concern as it was being placed. The discussion with wildlife was they wanted us to stop doing the mixture and put in the gray sand, and that's what we started doing once it was brought back up as a problem within our areas. So we have addressed it, but it was not. There is an area that does have the dark sand.
And we're always kept in the loop what's going on. The public usually don't get part of that connection. Was we allowed to do anything to the dunes until we got approval?
No, we had to ask the state for the allowance for us to be able to change it. This was a federal project, and the federal project allowed us to put the emergency sand back to protect the infrastructure and homes. And then we had to ask them permission to start cutting down the volume of sand in the walkways for the accesses.
Thank you.
As county council, are you proud of our beach renourishment, our dunes? I don't care what the federal government, everybody says. Are you proud of what our beach is?
No, we're not. That's why we went through the steps to do what we had to do, but we can't do anything unless we get their approval. And that's the steps we had to go through to get it.
Thank you. Who's next, Lisa?
Helen Cashwell.
Helen Cashville, 3407 East Yacht. I've been attending these workings of the town for more years than I'll care to remember. And I've come to the conclusion that words or actions are soon forgotten, and they didn't have much meaning in the first place. Most memorable, I think, in my listening to this is council passing an ordinance that the largest house that would be built would be 3,999 square feet because of the possible impact on a sewer system designed for a much smaller house. That ordinance never has been observed upon inception. We're building many hotels with the permission of council. No questions have been asked about how much capacity does the sewer have left and who held pumping stations upgraded or expanded, builder, customer, or you citizens. During a particularly heated campaign, one of the current council members stated he'd make certain that the finances of this town would be presented at each council meeting. I can't remember hearing the first one presented. Words, actions, observance. Why do we continue to attend these meetings? One can only hope and dream. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Cashwell. I have the financial report for April 2018 right here if you'd like to see it. So.
Joy Easley.
Sure.
My name is Joy Easley. I'm a local attorney, and my address for my office is 5219 East Oak Island Drive. I'm here tonight on behalf of Todd and Tammy Leonard, who are in the audience. They live at 128 Northwest 25th. The Leonards also own property at 43 Yopon Way, which is located in the Oak Island Estates development in the old Yopon Beach area. They have a relatively large lot, as the lots in that area are larger than what you normally have on the beach or other parts of the island. And they have tweaked the plan. They're building their personal residence, and it's about 3,800 square feet as after the last tweaking. And that's average size for that area, and it has been historically. There are larger homes in the golf course area of Oak Island Estates, so it's nothing unusual for that area. As they began the permit process, they were informed by staff that a sprinkler system would be required in their personal residence. And this requirement was not from the North Carolina State Residential Building Code, and it wasn't from the North Carolina Fire Prevention Code per se, chapters 1 through 47, but it was only because of that Appendix B that I passed out to you just a few minutes ago. And if you'll note at the top, that appendix is not mandatory. It says that unless you specifically adopt that ordinance, it's not a part of the fire code. That ordinance was adopted by the town actually years ago, initially in 2004, but a few years back it began to be enforced, perhaps as a reaction to increased development and a greater number of persons occupying the dwellings, because of course the town is concerned with safety, persons' lives. Todd and Tammy Leonard are building, as I said, their personal residence. They're not building a huge rental on the beachfront that will be overflowing with folks each week. Todd and Tammy Leonard feel that they're being punished monetarily because of the adoption by the town of Appendix B. As I said, it's their personal residence. You think of your house that you live in, and if you were cooking on your stove and had a small kitchen fire and you put it out, and you might have a little bit of damage to your cooktop or your cabinet. But if you've got a sprinkler system in your home and you have a small kitchen fire, sprinklers are going off. And then what you've got is a mess from down the ceiling down to the floor. You got your cooktop, you got your kitchen cabinets, possibly your countertops, sheetrock on the walls, wooden floor, whatever type flooring you have is going to be wet, and maybe even your insulation. So it's a different ball game in it. And as I said, it's not something that's required in the state building code, and it's not required in the regular volumes of our fire prevention code.
Mrs. Easley, I'm sorry, but your 3 minutes is up.
Okay. I just wanted to ask for a text amendment to do away with Appendix B, for you to consider that. Thank you so much.
Okay. Mr. Kelly, were you going to, or Mr. Eads, were you going to speak to this matter later, or?
I think Mr. Kelly may, and we're in agreement on what he and I discussed today.
Okay.
We're looking at bringing forward a text amendment to the next meeting. We'd like to get direction from either Brian or council to go ahead and give us permission to start working on this.
Okay.
Well,
Now, Brian will go ahead.
I need permission from the council.
Is that
the same that we would be seeking a director from council to come back at the June meeting with a proposed text amendment addressing this.
Okay.
So moved.
Is that a motion or just a consensus?
Consensus. Unless more than two of you object to it, the direction is fine.
Okay.
Agree, Lisa?
Agreed.
Consensus from everybody to?
Yep.
Okay. Yes. Okay, fine.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That's all I have signed up for public speakers.
All right. Okay, committee appointments, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. We have two people, Jody Britton and Leslie Stone. And everyone who would like to have Jody Britton remain on the board. Okay. All right. Administrative reports. Yes.
Can you go back to council reports and then the regular meeting consent agenda?
Okay. Council reports. Jeff, go ahead.
Okay. Councilor Blaylock, David, and myself went to Pine Knoll Shores to the annual Byways Convention, where they talked about numerous things. They even talked about oil drilling, the pros, the cons. We actually got to ride around 3 different towns. One of them was Emerald Isle, the one that beat us out for Top Beach, just to see how they did some of their construction, some of their stormwater. I found it very
unique. They had the same rules we have for stormwater, but they don't do it. We found that very, very unusual, all this building they had going on, and they wasn't following the same rules we're following. So it makes me think, why are we going through all the trouble taking these trees out when one size doesn't fit all? So I hope we're going to try to do something to help the town of Oak Island out to try to save some of our trees for the future.
Charlie?
Either that or we'll get the other town in trouble. Like Jeff said, it was a very enlightening meeting and we learned a lot. I would just like to thank everybody for, I went through a difficult situation a while ago, and I'm not going to go into any details, but I'd like to thank you who supported me on that very much. You know who you are.
Ms. Bell?
No report.
John?
Yes, I have two reports. First, I do want to comment on some of the public statements that have been made, because it suggests to me a much larger and more powerful theme. It's not about a sprinkler code, although that's important, and it's not about house size, that's important. The citizens have been very clear when we've polled them what they want. They want managed growth, some sensible policy that approaches size, density, congestion, preserves the environment. We could go on and flesh out a full definition of that. And so, from my standpoint, what really matters when we look at the UDO, which is coming up in June, is we look at the tools that are available to us to manage growth. And right now, they're fairly limited under North Carolina law, and I think that we need to really explore how we manage growth in a sensible way that's fair to property owner rights. So we have setbacks, we have an impervious surface requirement, we have parking, we have height. That's essentially our tools. And I think as we look at the potential for growth both on the island, building it completely out in the mainland, we need to really focus on how we're going to manage growth in a thoughtful way. And that's, those two comments spark that larger thought for me. That's really a focus that we have to have and that we have to codify when we consider the UDO. On matter number two, as some of you know, and all of Council knows, in January, Council had a retreat. And during the course of the retreat, Council adopted 5 goals. First was beach renourishment. The second was creating a strategic plan. And I'm happy to report to the public and to Council that the strategic plan portion, that report is now in front of Council, and they'll have some time to consider that. Some have said, well, a strategic plan is too complex, too elongated, too expensive. I agree, it can be. So what we have worked towards as a group is a strategic snapshot, a shorter, more limited, more targeted version for the next 3 years. Bear in mind that the purpose of any kind of strategic planning is to make sure that our efforts are focused, that our resources are applied correctly, and our policy direction provides clarity for those who are implementing the policy. We used a system similar to what we used during the course of the retreat with the North Carolina School of Government. We used a forced choice ranking system in 3 areas, and that was the delimitation: environment, infrastructure, and economic. And I'm pleased to say that there's a real sense of focus on the part of Council, as reported in the data that I collected. In terms of environment, it's very clear that we need to address, and I believe in an urgent way, beach renourishment. And the support for beach renourishment is for a recreational beach. We need to address ordinance enforcement. That came up both under environment and also under infrastructure. We need to have a thoughtful, creative, and eventually revenue-generating build-out of the pier. That came up under infrastructure. And under economic planning, a plan to develop the mainland, to build sustainable ratables, a plan to monitor traffic flow, parking, and a paid parking system also emerged as a goal. So I think there are some important elements of the strategic vision that we need to consider. Hopefully Council will do so. Hopefully Council will adopt what appears to be a strong consensus on the part of Council. and then give it to town administration to actually develop a detailed plan for the next 3 years. Because without that, we have no direction, and we lurch from problem to problem, and they will invariably come up, temporal issues all of the time. But I think we need to focus on the beach, on ordinance enforcement, economic development. Those should be our priorities as we go forward. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
All right. Under old business, we have the item that you wanted removed for discussion. Approval of the audit contract for fiscal year 2017-2018.
Yes.
Can we first address the rest of the consent agenda? The remaining items on the consent agenda?
All right. We need a vote on that?
A motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
A motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
As amended.
As amended.
All in favor? All right, Mr. Bach, you on it?
I am. Thank you, sir. Mr. Kelly, with your permission, I'd like to address the next set of questions to Mr. Hatton, if that's all right with you. These are financial questions. And I'm looking at page 62 of the audit proposal, and I have to say I have both questions and concerns, so I'm going to start with the questions. So I take it this is the end of a 5-year contract with this firm, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
This will be their 5th year.
All right. And was this contract put out for request for proposal originally?
Originally, yes, it was.
It was. Okay. And are the previous audits returned by this firm clean audits, in your view? They are. Okay. So much for the questions. Now my concerns. The contractor submission from Preston Douglas is frankly troubling. They have passed with deficiency because they omitted data on employee benefits in an inadvertent way. I assume they omitted our data?
No, sir. The comment that they got from their peer review, and a peer review is something that a CPA firm who performs audits has to have every 3 years, and they get on a rotation. This happened to be on an audit from an office that's not the one that does our audit, on a 401k benefit plan audit that they performed. They did not disclose some of the information, and their footnotes did not read as the GASB, General Accepted Standard Government Board, wants the footnotes to be. So they did not leave out any financial information. It was just the disclosure on the footnotes. It had nothing to do with our audit whatsoever.
Okay, so that was going to be my next concern, whether or not this had an impact on us. So this is an oversight, put it benignly here, on the part of the company, but had nothing to do with the specific audit of Oak Island.
Correct, right.
Okay. So I would assume pass with deficiency is not acceptable, that if we RFP this again for the next set of audits, the next 5-year round of audits, that if this company returns with pass with deficiency, we're not going to accept that.
Exactly.
You would concur with that?
And they've already requested their next peer review either in December or January, because they've made all the corrections and done what they had to do to get this rectified, because it's a fairly large firm and they don't want to lose audits.
Right. And so they've remediated this.
Yes, sir.
Is there anything else that we should know about the company? Is this the only pass with deficiency element in there?
That's the only one that I've ever seen that they had.
And just from a larger landscape view, companies are peer reviewed periodically. How many of them pass with deficiency versus pass?
I wouldn't have exact numbers, but I had already knew that some of the CPA firms in the state of North Carolina was getting the same letter that they had, because I'm, on the mailing list, and I see the other CPA firms, and they were getting the same type of notice on this. Because 2 years ago, they went through a big change on pension plans for municipalities and governmental agencies.
Okay. And final question, do you have any concerns about their ability to conduct this audit?
No, sir, none at all.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, under new business.
Pro Tem?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that council grant authority to enter into a standard audit contract subject to approval by the local government commission with S. Preston Douglas and Associates LLP for audit and financial statements for preparation services for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2018, at a fee not to exceed $44,000.
Second.
Motion is second. Everybody in favor?
No.
Okay. Mr. Bach dissents. Okay, next item will be consideration of a resolution requesting North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality to reconsider its stormwater requirements for the town of Oak Island. And this was placed on the agenda by Councilman Bach. And in March, the town council had a special meeting to discuss the town's tree vegetation ordinance, the state stormwater regulations, and the effect that these regulations may be having on the town's tree canopy. During the meeting, several of the speakers suggested that the town ask the state to take another look at the regulation, as a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't take into account differing environments. Resolution requests North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality reconsider stormwater regulations for the town of Oak Island is included for council's consideration. Mr. Bach.
Yes, I think that what was telltale for me during the public hearing was the extraordinary burden that the state stormwater regulations appear to place on our entire community, the homeowner to the builder to the town itself, the horrendous loss of trees, and it appeared to be a cry for a reconsideration on the part of the state so that we can obtain some relief from this process, because without relief and without action, we're going to denude the remaining part of the island, and we will not have, save for tiny little copse of trees on our lots. So it occurred to me that we ought to petition the state by passing a resolution asking them to consider the unique nature of our topography and our situation, where it seems to me we have a compelling case for the hardship.
Any discussion? Start on my left here.
I totally agree. I totally agree with him. I think we need to approach the state and see if something can be done to ease the burden on the contractors, the homeowners, and try to save some of the trees we have on the island.
I also agree. I went down to one particular site to view what they had done, and I was surprised by the amount of room that the stormwater system took up. And one size, as you said, one size does not fit all.
All right. Mr. Kelly, it seems I recall the last meeting we had about this, there was some concern about we were already kind of under the radar on this. Is that correct?
There was a modification to the stormwater probably about 9 months ago to the plan that was in front of us, and it basically doubled what they were wanting to do. Enough townships, municipalities came back and made their voices heard, and the state put it on hold and kept the current policy that we're following now underneath the administration that we're doing. They've always told us that that's sitting there in reserve if they ever want to bring it back to us. But what we're asking for, I don't believe would be a hardship for them. We would contact them and tell them we would like to discuss Oak Island specifically.
Okay. All right, have a motion?
I make a motion that we adopt the resolution requesting NC Department of Environmental Quality reconsider stormwater regulations for the town of Oak Island.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? All right. Under new business number 2, consideration of proposed amendments to Chapter 32 vegetation, and this is yours also, Mr. Bach.
It is, and while I sincerely hope that the folks in Raleigh will listen to us and consider the evidence that we could bring to bear on the burden that the current definition of stormwater management represents, especially to an island community, I think that we can do more. So I would propose that we change the current ordinance to double the number of trees which have to be preserved, currently estimated at 1 tree per 1450 square feet to 2 or 1450 square feet. I also would propose that we have a replanting incentive program to encourage homeowners to replant trees per an application to the town per native specimen trees to receive a $100 tax credit upon completion of their replanting. I'm estimating the cost of this at a build-out of 300 new homes to be $30,000 per annum. And I would submit that while I harbor the hope that Raleigh will adjust the regulations, I think in the interim that we need to take action. There was a lot of discussion about how sad it is to see trees carted away and cut down. There was an awful lot of anguish in the room, but there was no action. So this is an action we can take. It will require more careful design. It will require design features that promote 12 trees instead of 6. I think it is worth the effort to preserve as many trees as we possibly can and not hang all of our hopes and hitch our wagon to the star in Raleigh changing its mind.
Brian,
Yes.
is it legal to give a tax credit incentive in the state of North Carolina?
Well, on a larger scale, yes. I would suggest and strongly advise that instead of, if the council's inclined to give a $100 financial break under this proposal, to not do it by way of a tax credit, but rather waiving some sort of fee. As long as that's uniformly applied, that's much more defendable if it's challenged. But the uniformity of tax application is very strict in North Carolina, and absent the General Assembly giving us specific authority to do a $100 tax credit for replanting, I would strongly advise against going the tax credit way. But again, there's more than $100 worth of fees associated with development, so you could find another way of waiving a fee or giving a fee reduction, provided that it's uniformly applied. My question would be, on the backside of that, would you want someone to come back? I mean, you know, you could put the trees in, get your tax credit. If we're just talking about one per lot, is that correct? Is that the proposal?
That's correct.
Right. Then I don't anticipate someone acting nefariously. Like if you could get 20 $100 fee waiver, somebody might plant a field and then a month later take them all out. But I don't think that'll be the case with one tree. But you may want to consider on the backside saying it lives for 3 or 4 months, whatever. That's going to be a staff enforcement nightmare. But to your question, Councilmember Bell, I would not go the way of tax credit. I would highly recommend you go waive a waiver of a fee or a reduction of a fee.
Councilor, can I clarify? So in lieu of substituting for tax credit, would it read fee waiver? That sounds vague. Or does it need to be a specific fee that's waived?
Well, I would index it to the development associated with planting the tree. So I was going to ask Steve Edwards I don't mean to put you on the spot, I guess I am. What would you recommend would be the easiest target fee?
First, let me ask this. How much is a development fee?
That's what I was getting ready to say. It's $100, so you could waive the development fee.
There you go.
Okay, and your second, I'm sorry?
So was your intent just for new construction? Or it was?
It was. May I also, I have a second clarification, Councilor, if I may. So you would add to the second bullet point one fee waiver per lot? Is that your other?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Well, you want to make it clear where you're capping it at. I don't know all the fees that would be associated with new development. You may be able to get up to two, but I would make it unequivocal in what we're doing, how many you can get and what requirements you have to meet to get that way.
I actually think they're both sensible suggestions. I'm just trying to clarify what you're recommending to us. Your other suggestion I have some concerns with, because I was trying to avoid having additional management labor time costs associated with, visiting all of these lots. I mean, at some point for $100, if someone's willing to replant and they file an application and they plant according to the specimen guide and they get a CO, we're going to hope they water these plants.
I would think the more, I threw that out there just as something to think about. I would think probably the more feasible way would be to come back and look at this after a year or so and assess whether we're seeing more trees on the island and whether the program's working. But at $100 a lot or even $200 a lot, you know, I think it makes sense. I don't see a developer for $100 going through the trouble of planting or replanting a tree to get $100 and then pulling it out later to get a larger envelope or something, you know. So
Frankly, I wasn't pinning my hopes on developers. I was pinning it on the homeowner.
Point taken, sir.
Fair enough.
So, Steve, if you have a certain species of trees that is in this list for them to get their $100, are you going to have an arborist to do that in your department?
I'm not an arborist, so I can identify.
Can you think of what sort of issues this is going to cause for your department, or?
Not really. You know, just a matter of waiving the fee for a development permit would be a.
So you would waive the fee in the beginning and then hope that they would plant the tree after they get the?
Well, we'd hold CO up at the end. We've got a tool in the box that'll be sure the tree's planted. Now, nothing to guarantee it's, you know, retention later on, or they'll.
But you're not going to have an arborist on staff for you to?
Not for that.
Okay.
Let me ask you this question, going back not to the fee, but to the tree itself. We sitting here when we had that public hearing meeting with the contractors and everybody else, and they were telling us they have a hard time sometimes with the stormwater regulation to even keep a tree.
That's correct.
And some of the plans they showed us with the stormwater, they couldn't put a tree nowhere on that lot. So if we require them to keep 2 trees or put 2 trees back, it's going to be almost impossible, isn't it?
It's like Mr. Buck said, it'd be challenging. I believe that was your words.
Challenging?
I said it would, yes, you're quoting me correctly. It would be a design challenge, but since we're looking at seemingly some anecdotal information, because we don't have hard data, but I would suggest if you drive around the island and look at development, there are lots with far more than 6 trees that have been saved through design. And with an incentive, while it would be difficult, I would hope that a number of homeowners would take advantage of it, is the presumption here.
This also has to go to the planning board first, correct?
Yes.
To go to the point of this, do we have a list of what's considered natural occurring trees?
We have a list of trees that are indigenous to the area.
Does that include palm trees?
Palm trees are on the list. We do have a native palm.
Okay, that answers my question.
That's a good point, though. I think that we'd be well served by having a list of acceptable trees.
My understanding is we do. Is that not correct, Jake?
There's several different lists out there. There's one that was created that's inside our UDO. There's
Excuse me just a minute. I can't hear you, Jake.
There's a few different lists out there. There's one that is inside our UDO. There's also another one that the Tree City Working Group created as well. And then there's another tree list from the NC Forest Service tree grant that we won last year, year before. So, yeah, they are out there and they're available for us to use. One other side note, if this is something you guys are going to vote on, you might want to clarify that it wouldn't be, you know, a small tree this size, that technically is a tree that they plant, it's a minimum of 15 feet, or DBH, or diameter at breast height, or, you know, something like that, some specific standards.
Don't people normally go by calipers?
Yeah. Yeah. That's, yep.
Well, I mean, perhaps the planning board could come up with a proposal on that, but conceptually, I mean, I agree that the more detail, the better. I mean, again, for $100 a lot, I don't see a whole lot of backhanded things going on. If we were talking about $5,000 a lot, I could see people getting kind of creative.
Oh, I would start cutting them down in my yard so I could replant.
But for $100 to $200 a lot, I think it's a great idea, provided it's not a tax, break, or a credit. and planning board and staff can come back next month with with recommendations regarding those various things. Type of tree list, how you're going to measure the tree, or, what trees qualify essentially for this program.
So is your direction, council, that we remand this to the planning board? Is that?
I believe it
That's what I
has
was
to.
going to ask you.
Yes, sir.
I'd say let it go to the planning board, and in our next budget meeting we have on Friday, when we talk about fees and schedules, we address fees too at that time.
That's fine.
Let it go to the planning board with the understanding that council would like to see this program, something that the planning board believe is workable to implement this program.
Well, yeah, that's fine. With this proviso attached to it, strictly from one council member, there was a lot of hand-wringing at the last meeting. There was a lot of discussion of what can we do. Well, there are things we can do. This is one of them, and hopefully it'll get due consideration. And with that, I'll send it to the planning board.
All right. Is that everything, Madam?
We need a motion to do that.
I would prefer a motion if you don't mind.
Okay.
Mr. Bob?
I think, I'm not sure exactly how, I formulate a motion to send a proposal to the planning board.
Direct staff to prepare a proposal.
Okay. I move that we direct staff to,
There's a proposed motion in the,
I'll read that motion.
Okay.
Hang on, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. Staff will prepare the ordinance amendments as directed and send them to the planning board for consideration.
All right, second. All in favor? Unanimous. Is that everything, Madam Clerk?
I did skip administrative reports. I don't know if Mr. Kelly and Mr. Eads had something they wanted to review.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Administrative reports, if you had something that you.
What, were you able to put that on the?
Yes.
Mayor's not here tonight, but Friday we met with the county regarding an issue, I want to say recurring, it's not recurring, an epidemic, but it's occurred 2 or 3 times. And it pertains to lots that have been subdivided after the assessment roll was set, and then the subdivided lot is assigned a new parcel number. Obviously, if that parcel number was not in existence at the time the assessment roll was set, that new parcel number could not have been assessed. We have a policy that if a subdivision occurs, that the newly subdivided, the new lot that was created by the subdivision has to, and I'll just read it verbatim, re-subdivision of lots. Any subdivision of lots following the levying of assessments will be required to pay the appropriate connection fees per the town's fee schedule at that time. And I'll defer to David as to what the total amount of those reconnection fees are. Is it 8, how much is it?
Sewer tap and impact fee?
Yeah.
$81.42.
So it's roughly just over $8,000. From time to time, we'll have a subdivision where the parent parcel retains the original parcel ID number, which if they've paid the assessment, they get credit for paying the assessment. The newly subdivided created lot then is subject to these connection fees. The parties at the closing table have agreed amongst themselves that the newly created lot that's being sold will get credit for the sewer assessment fee. The county is the one that assigns the parcel ID number. So if the agreement amongst the parties is this new lot has been created, it's going to get credit for the assessment we've paid, but the county assigns a new parcel ID for this newly created lot because the owner is retaining the original parent parcel. There's no way for the town to reconcile the parties' intention. The town cannot give this lot credit, the new lot, for an assessment when this lot did not exist at the time the assessment roll was passed. By statute, all lots assessed have to be on the roll, and then people have a 30-day window to contest it. So one particular citizen came to us with a situation where she was facing the connection fee of roughly $8,000. The seller agreed that she would get credit for the assessment at the closing. The closing attorney agreed that she would get assessment, or understood that she would get credit for the assessment at closing. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the settlement disclosure used to be called HUDs, now they're called settlement disclosure documents, listed that. but we cannot make that a legal reality. So we met with the county Friday, and we're trying to work that out. The county is going to, and you can't just switch the lot numbers either, because that creates all kinds of GIS issues. So we think we've come up with a solution that may involve litigation, so I won't get into the details of the solution, but that's the backdrop as to why we came up. Can you scroll down so you can see the notice on that? This is a notice we put together based on the town's policy on how we assign assessment credits. When we send out certification to closing attorneys, they don't ask the question about who gets the assessment. A lot of times they don't even know that the lot that they're closing on is a newly created lot with a new parcel ID. So to bring it to their attention, this is on a sheet of paper by itself. It's pretty conspicuous if you saw the actual document. The notice at the top's there to get your attention. Then it explains what's going on there through, I won't read it verbatim, but that last paragraph specifically refers to sellers, buyers, real estate agents, and closing attorneys and their staffs to look into the parcel ID issue, compare it to items 1, 2, 3 to make sure what they intend to do at closing is what can legally happen. We're hoping that that will at least draw their attention to the issue, and they'll call the town and ask for follow-up, or call the county to ask for follow-up. That's going to be on the first page of the certifications we give out, and the intent there is that's the first thing you're going to see. You have to flip it over or turn it over to get to the certifications. The county, including the county manager, we're thankful that we're trying to address this because it creates a headache for them as well. So to the extent any of you may have already known about this type of issue lurking out there, that's where we are on that. And that's what, again, that's like a 8 by 10. It's, the notice is that big on there.
And the only problem I have with this is that as parcels are sold and lots are sold and lots are combined and then uncombined, is my concern is that the attorney's offices will get complacent with being used to seeing this. And the reason I say that is because, giving a little bit of background of how this has even come about, is during the sewer installation and assessment, people who had more than one lot ran to the county and combined them so they only had to pay one sewer assessment. So it created headaches with the tax office and the assessment, and this is what, yes.
Right. And that's why we created the policy on how the subdivided lots are dealt with.
The tax certifications actually are supposed to list every year that you want assessment taxes with the parcel number, the lot numbers, and all that. But like I said, it's become so complacent that they give you the first year and then run a line down through.
Right.
Most of them do, not all.
Right.
So I wish there was some way that we could, where it has to be acknowledged that they had received it, or, well, and I know that that's almost impossible.
This is the classic no good deed goes unpunished, okay? And I don't mean to sound cold. We are doing the best we can to provide a public service that we're not legally required to do.
Right.
People are deemed to know the law, whether you take the time to read our code of ordinances or not. I mean, that's clear. Right. And if people don't, including closing attorneys, especially closing attorneys, but since we realize this is happening, we can only do so much. If we start requiring notifications and like that, we're essentially buying a problem that we didn't create. Right. I mean, our policies are clear.
I understand that.
In addition to this notice, though, Sheila, we're also going to do a joint memorandum, if you will, of the issue with the county. This is the idea. You know, obviously, we're going to have to agree to its contents. With the county and the town signing off on like a kind of a memorandum notice that explains the issue and the problem and why it exists and what various policies this impacts. And we're going to put it in the box at the courthouse for all of the closing attorneys. Well, I think it's at the Register of Deeds. They all have their own. Trial attorneys have a box in the clerk's office, people that do court stuff, and then I think the closing attorneys also have a box in the Register of Deeds office. That's about all we can do. I don't know if we put it on the website or anything about this or not. We could probably put that joint statement on the website. I don't want to speak for the county manager, but I believe I understood her to say Friday that if we can get it in the right format, that they may put it on their website. Again, I don't want to, I'll let her speak for herself. David,
Right.
didn't she mention something like? So we're doing all we can to get the word out. But at the end of the day, again, not trying to sound cold, it's not a problem the town of Oak Island created, and we have policies that address what happens.
Correct.
We're doing right now is an information campaign to try to help people prevent running into this problem.
Thank you.
And the county, I want to thank the county. I want to go on the record for it to be in the minutes. They met here at Town Hall, and it was a very productive meeting. And I think jointly we're going to be able to assist the citizens that are buying property in Oak Island that might run into this issue.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, David, do you want me to talk about?
Right away. Yeah.
Are you going to do it yours and want me to talk then?
Well, I could,
Well, I would like to add to when David starts talking about right-of-way issues, I might have a few things to suggest or discuss.
yes, council's been working on right-of-way concerns that we have, and Councilman Weinkoff and Councilman Blaylock, they were assigned this task. And so they've been riding around town looking at things and coming up with a plan that we can sort of implement, and something that we can give Jake to give to the planning board to get started with. One of the things they had come back with, excuse me, was an estimated area of roughly 8 foot next to the property line that the property owners could put shrubbery or vegetated growth or plants to a maximum height of 48 inches to match what the fence line would be if they had a fence constructed there. They also looked at the widths of the driveways, which would stay at 24 feet. They looked at water meter boxes and obstacles that we would kind of keep plants and everything away so we could access those. The same thing as the sewer pits and cleanouts. So basically what we asked Brian to do is look at it and come back and explain, by doing this, were we allowing the property owners any kind of rights or anything within the right-of-way or easements need to be given to them, or where would we stand if we had to go in and remove obstacles that they planted and the liability that we would have with the property owners?
And I would tell you that it's not unusual to allow right-of-way encroachments. I've seen a lot on the coastal towns when someone wants to build a crossover or something like that, and part of that structure falls within either a DOT right-of-way or a town right-of-way, or sometimes both. Generally, what you do is an individual license agreement per person that wants that. The scope here seems to be a lot larger. But I would highly recommend that if you go that route, we fashion the ordinance to be more of a license agreement, or the town of Oak Island hereby grants a license to the property owners or their tenants to do whatever we're going to authorize in the right of way. That license is revocable at any time, and the people need to acknowledge that should the town need to get into that right of way for any reason, with or without notice, they can. That poses a potential that whatever they've planted there may be destroyed, ruined, damaged, that the town accepts no responsibility and has no obligation to pay for that damage to whatever they did in there. And that they agree, well, this is the tricky part, you would want them to hold the town harmless and indemnify the town if someone got hurt on something we're allowing to be there. I don't know how you're going to do that by ordinance. That's going to be the tricky part. But it's not a matter, you can put whatever you want into ordinance, but I can tell you, and I've seen this in other towns, if somebody spends 15 grand, 10 grand, 7 grand on landscaping timbers or some really nice exotic planting and really beautiful landscape, it looks great, and you've got to get in there to tear it up to fix a utility line of some sort, your phone's going to ring off the hook. His phone's going to ring off the hook. Y'all's phone's going to ring off the hook. And the fact that it's written in the ordinance otherwise is not going to make that person feel like good about wasting however much money they've spent on their landscaping. So there's pros to it, but there's also some downside to it. And I would ask you to consider that in what you're thinking about. Consider those factors when you're contemplating what you're going to allow in the right-of-way. I mean, I've seen it, and it happens, and it's not pretty. And it may only happen 1 out of every 100 lots, but if someone spends a lot of money out there, you want to do the right thing, but the ordinance says what it says.
And just so I can clarify so everybody else knows, Councilor Blaylock and myself went out riding, looking around a lot of the town. And what we found out, there wasn't an ordinance that was established clear with anything we saw. There was plants from 3 foot off the road up to 10 foot off the road. And there's sprinkler systems that goes all the way up to the state highway. Sod goes all the way up to the state highway in some areas that we have allowed to happen over years and years and years. And I didn't think it's fair to go back and say, hey, you got to move all your stuff out of the way now, 10 foot off the road, because that's what the ordinance says. So we tried to get something uniform where it was, we looked and most of the stuff is anywhere from 7 to 8 foot off the road, where you can have an ordinance that's clear what you can do, let them plant it, beautification of your yards, to decide their driveways, and let them go at that point. And let them understand the way it is right now with your stuff, we can tear it up now because you're in the right of way, and it'll be the same thing if we allow you to do the 7 foot. Because we go up and down the road, you see these little skinny posts stuck in the road right there at the edge of the roads, and if somebody runs off the road, they're plowing through it. So we want to do something more uniform in the town instead of sporadic everywhere you look, and make it a little bit easier instead of telling people they got to move stuff out of their yards. So that's why the initial.
Go ahead.
That's why the initial, we went in, took a look all the way around and thought, with everything the way it is, the 7 foot will allow most of the people who have stuff right now in that area to keep it and not worry about having to tear it out. To me, I'm gonna get more phone calls if I say you gotta move all your stuff out of the way.
Let me ask you a question, Mr. Counselor.
Brian works too.
Brian works too. What I hear you saying is you can handle this on a case-by-case basis?
Well, I'm saying that's where I've seen it. I mean, the best vehicle for the town is the town as an entity is a license agreement. Because one of the concerns was, are we conveying any way property rights? And a license agreement by law clearly is not. It's a license. It's not an easement. It's not a lease. It's a license. I don't see how you're going to do that if the goal is to allow everyone in town to do it. I mean, you could do it. It's going to be, the staff's going to hate me for recommending that, because if you have 200 people line up to apply for a license agreement and they have to specify what they want to do in the right of way, that's the cleanest, easiest way for everybody. Then you can get the indemnification agreement. As a lawyer, that's what I recommend. But I'm not sitting in those seats. And I understand you want to accommodate the public's interest in maybe doing a little bit more in the right of way.
So can we do like a grandfather clause, allowing the ones that have already developed this?
Well, you could do it. If your goal is to have uniformity enforcement of the right of way, I would do an amortization schedule and say it's got to be out of the right of way. The law requires a reasonable time. You can't say by next week. But I would suggest, and maybe staff can chime in on how long, a year or two amortization schedule, and then a reminder 6 months from now, a reminder 6 months from now, and then 90 days out say, okay, you're still in violation, the schedule, you're required by X date, we're going to start enforcement mechanisms by that date, or however much leadway you want to give them, but it's the fairest way to do it. If you want to enforce it for everybody, amortization of compliance is the fairest way to do it.
So I'm not sure what is the purpose? I mean, are we trying to beautify the street right away? Are we trying to keep vehicular parking?
This is what was brought to us.
Okay.
That was brought to us to clear everything out of everybody's yards 10 foot off the road.
Okay.
That's going to create a lot of havoc, a lot of destruction in people's yards. It's been there for years.
Right.
And there's no sense in that, because most of the stuff is at least 7 foot off the road, which that's why I went with this 7 foot. That would stop the majority of it and still proceed with what needed to be done.
Okay, so since it's in the street right away, is enforcement code enforcement, or is it a police officer?
Jake. I mean, it depends what
How many
it
more
is.
staff members are you going to need to enforce another ordinance?
I should clarify, if it's something that's on wheels, like a junk vehicle, boat trailer, that kind of stuff, inside the right-of-way, that's a police matter. If it's inside someone's property lines, it's on wheels like a junk vehicle, that's code enforcement. But if you're talking about hardened structures, like posts and ropes or fence or something like that, inside the right-of-way, that's code enforcement. As far as staff implementation of enforcement goes, I think the best way to do it, amortization period, like the town attorney suggested, 1 to 2 years is standard. We do have that for other items in the ordinance, a 1-year amortization period. And I would also break it down in zones too, so I could focus on different areas and knock it out over time.
Well, one thing about zones is imagine if you were the person in the first zone versus the person in the last zone. I don't know how many zones there would be. Jake, I would agree to disagree with you on that. I understand that would be a lot more manageable, but I think that the schedule needs to be town-wide now. To the extent staff can only do so much at some time, then that's an in-house prioritization.
Yeah, we have nearly 13,000 parcels on the island. If you were to do a mass mailing saying everyone's got 1 year, first would be to do a windshield survey of the entire town, make a master list of all those that would need to get a letter, and then doing it. You're talking about a lot of money, a lot of, just in mailing alone, not to mention time and the flood of phone calls and everything else that would create. Typically, the first thing someone says when they get a letter like this is, well, look at my neighbor down the street, you're picking on me. And oftentimes my response is, well, you know, here's a spreadsheet of 25 people that got the exact same letter in the same week with all are right into your exact neighborhood on your street or right next to you. That doesn't really make them feel better because it doesn't change their mind. But, you know, that's how I respond.
I think the proposal is quite provocative, but perhaps we need to think a little bit further about how we go about this, because it seems to me there are two problems. One is the pre-existing conditions, which are widespread. As Councilman Weinkauf said, over the many years, you know, they exist. The other, as our counselor is pointing out, we've become legally entangled instantly in a lot of this. And the scale of it is massive. It will consume resources. So, you know, I would suggest that we think about how we prioritize this. And again, from my point of view, safety violations in the right-of-way, denial of public access in a right-of-way, that should be the first priority. And there shouldn't be any compromise on that. Everything else, I think we need to continue to work through. The 7-foot barrier seems sensible. I trust your judgment on that. Would, in effect, grandfather most of the pre-existing conditions, but I think we need to think it through, given the advice our council has given us about our potential exposure as we start this campaign. But I think this is progress, and I think we need to think further about it. I, for one, would prioritize safety and denial of public access, and that will give us a lot of work, just starting there.
I certainly agree if you have to prioritize it, that any safety hazard, number one, whether it's an enforcement issue or not, if we're aware of a safety hazard in one of our right-of-ways, that needs to be addressed regardless of what we do with this item. Right. I defended a case for another town where there was a cinder block sticking up like a triangle out of the ground, and a woman tripped on it, shattered her ankle, and it was a non-union. They almost had to amputate her leg, and it was a nasty, nasty case. It was in our right-of-way, and we resolved the case. But if you're aware of any safety issues, they need to be addressed right now.
Wouldn't anything that's in a street right-of-way that is public water access be a safety hazard?
Well, it depends. I mean, you know, you have your own duty to look out for your own safety. I mean, you know, like the right-of-way is not necessarily made for pedestrian traffic, and there's some case law on that. But if you have like a hidden thing that only when the sun's at a certain angle, you can only see it when the sun's behind you or in front of you or something like that, that we're aware of, or something that we know someone's already been injured or almost got injured. I mean, we just have to be reasonable. We don't have to be like insurers of people's safety. Those need to be on the immediate hit list.
Well, one of the things that we saw, and there's a case I saw the other day that I mentioned, you got someone had metal posts driven into the ground, 5 feet tall. If someone riding a bicycle falls off of their bicycle and they land on that metal post, they're going to be hurt.
Right.
So there should be no question about that. I don't see why that wouldn't be addressed immediately.
Again, the person riding the bicycle has a duty to not be negligent themselves. And if you don't see a 5-foot metal post that's there to be seen, I mean, I'm not arguing with you, I'm agreeing with you.
This thing's 6 inches off the road. I mean, if a car's coming the other way, the bicycle has to get out of the way. Where's he going to go?
Into the metal post.
Well, the car would have to get, well.
And I think it's something we got to work on, because we even seen a brand-new house. Beside the driveway, they had nice plantings and everything beside the driveway, but that was in violation. The homeowners or the contractors doesn't have no clear path of things to do. And it's up to us to make sure everything is more easier for them to handle instead of just trying to fly by the seat of their pants.
It goes back to the situation of, in the past, this hasn't been enforced on a regular basis. So a lot of this stuff has come up. Well, we need to put in an educational program to let the citizens know that changes are coming, give them the opportunity to understand why,
Right.
and then go through the process. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
And as far as Jake's point on mailing and all that, again, people are deemed to know what our ordinances are. So everyone's not going to come to these meetings, everyone's not going to go to our website, and everyone's certainly not going to read our code of ordinances. But we could do the best we can to get it out there on a cheaper medium. But the ones that are the most egregious, whether it be safety, eyesore, or blocking public access, what have you, we can target the mailing of that kind of thing. And once you get to the enforcement part, you are going to have to mail people, give actual notice. It's doable, but it's just got to be a concerted effort, and everybody's got to be on the same page of what we're doing.
All right. Madam Clerk, now, are we finished?
Yes, sir.
Chair will entertain a motion to go into closed session.
Did they do the appointment?
I'd like to make a motion that we go into closed session to consult with the town attorney on pending litigation pursuant to NCGS 143, 318, 11A3.
Second.
All in favor? There's no action taken in closed session. Chair will entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend, help me, Lisa.
Suspend the rules
Suspend the rules and add an agenda item
for consideration,
directing staff
to suspend enforcement of fire
code
appendix
appendices until the June meeting.
till council
Council
consideration.
can take action at the June meeting. How'd I do?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Yay.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.